writing a book won't teach you what you know that much. Although for some people it can help a little bit. But what it will do is it'll show you the holes in what you know, and it'll teach you how to explain what you know. Because like even though you might be a true expert in your head, but there's a big difference between being an expert and being able to teach other people or explain it to other people. Totally different thing.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Origins podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. I'm your host, Scott Martin. And today we have an incredible guest, Tucker Max. He's the founder of Scribe Media, formerly Book in a Box, a publishing company, self-publishing company, and definitely knocking out of the park with the rapid growth of people self-publishing. And we kind of do a deep dive into why write a book, what are some of the benefits, some of the unique things to think about when thinking about self-publishing, and some of the benefits of it. So, in full disclosure, they're my publisher for my upcoming book, Groundswell, The Unseen Wave of Marketing Growth. And I couldn't be happier with the entire process. So I was really wanted to interview Tucker Max, because I view building a book and creating a book, clearing out your ideas and publishing as an incredible sustainable idea to share with the world and your gifts. So without further ado, let's paddle in. Here we are, another episode. We're with the one and only Tucker Max. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
You bet. So just want to jump right into you've got one of the most interesting business models. It's called Scribe Media, and you help authors in a very innovative way. In full disclaimer, I'm actually a client. That's actually how I reached out to you. And I thought maybe you could just jump in and tell people a little bit about Scribe and some things you're doing.
Yeah, so basically, I've been a professional writer for like 20 years. And the first question you get when you're an author is, what's your book about? And most people just kind of politely listen to get to the second question, which is, I've always wanted to write a book. How did you do it? Right. And so long story short, I eventually got tired of because I would start actually explaining to people what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny, like most people didn't actually want to know what to do. They just kind of wanted it like done magically for them. So I started a business with a buddy of mine. Like this woman at an entrepreneur dinner basically was like, how do I do? I explained it all to her, and she kind of like rolled her eyes. She's like, okay, well, how do I get it done without doing all that? And I'm like, wait, that doesn't even make sense. What do you mean? And she's like, just get the book out of my head, and without writing it. And I was like, but she's like, not ghostwriting, like not like you just make something up. It has to be my ideas, my words, my voice. And I was like, you can't do it. And she's like, this is an entrepreneur dinner. What are you doing here if you can't help me solve a novel problem? And I'm like, ugh, all right, fine. So I got obsessed with this idea. And then I realized, oh, this is a solved problem. This was solved 2,000 years ago. This is literally the job of scribes. And I was like, ugh. So then I kind of like, figured out what's every step required to write a good nonfiction book. And I realized you only need the author for about 40%. It's an important 40%, but there's still a massive amount of work that's done that could be done without the author. And so I kind of proposed an idea to her. She's like, yep, cut me a check. And almost like I did it really, it wasn't even like a business. I was just like, let me just do this and just prove to myself
Just
I
try
can
to
get this
figure it
done.
out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like it worked great. And then she started referring people to me, and I'm like, why? What for? And she's I'm like, hey, can you do the same thing for me you did for Melissa? And I'm like, yeah, I guess, but I don't want to.
So you kind of reluctantly fell
I'm not
into
a
this
very good
business.
business person, right?
Yeah.
And so eventually, like I had so many people asking me to do this. I got with my friend and guy I know, and I basically was like, "Look, I'll teach you exactly how to do it. And then you can split the money and you just go do it." And I thought it'd be like a few projects. And then all of a sudden, like, it's like we had $250,000 in sales in like 2 months. And he's like, dude, this is a business. And I'm like, oh, actually, I said, I think this might be a business. He's like, well, you think? Like, this is all I do. This is full-time work now. And so that was 6 years ago. And since then, we have just kind of been off to the races. We've done 700 plus books are published now. We've got close to 2,000 or another 1,000 in process. And then, we've done, multiple huge best-selling books. And, it's like we kind of have set the standard for what I call professional publishing, right? Because it used to be
Mhm.
like either traditional or self. Those were the only two options. And like self was always down market and not done well or whatever. So we kind of carved out a middle where it's like, well, what if you could do it yourself, but with the best guidance and the best structure and the best kind of publishing, like book cover designers and whatever. And so we kind of created professional publishing and carved out the middle, and here we are.
And when you self-publish, you're responsible for the distribution and all that stuff as well, right?
Yeah, well, we do. Our company does.
Yeah,
Like when
you do
someone
that.
hires
But
us,
if
we
I
do
was going to do a
everything.
self-publishing, that's what's missing, correct?
To some extent, the real thing that's missing for most people in self-publishing is professional guidance, right?
Okay.
Like the book will be there's any number of problems that can happen with self-publishing. A bunch of them can happen in writing, but like even if you write a really good book, well structured, all that kind of stuff, then there's like there's a million steps to perfect. It's easy to publish a crappy book. It's hard to publish a professional book because there's so many steps. There's proofreading, copy editing, layout, design, cover design, author bio, book description, and you go down the list of things. It's a huge pain in the butt. And
There's
so,
zero chance I would have done it without you guys.
right, that's what most professionals say. But someone like you is like, I'm not going to do a book if it's not really good, but I don't want to do all that myself. So that's why before us, there wasn't a really good solution if someone didn't want to go traditional or couldn't and they wanted the ownership and the freedom of self-publishing, but they needed it to be professional like traditional. There wasn't a good solution.
So for people that are listening, it's like this book is about sustainable ideas. Like books are like the most sustainable content in the planet. Like look at the Bible. It's like this is
Exactly.
like this is like, it. And I don't think this is going away. What do you what's your thoughts on going forward? The books publishing going down, up? I mean, with COVID, I think it must be exploding.
Yeah, so the numbers are real clear. So book sales have been trending upwards very consistently for the last 20 years or 15 years. 20 years, I think. So book sales are going up pretty consistently. For a while, ebook sales were crushing it and looking like they were going to overtake physical, and physical would go away. That actually switched about 4 to 5 years ago, and they've stabilized now. Like ebooks about 40%, physicals about 60-ish. That was stabilized for a while. Now audio is really taking off, and audio is pulling most of its um, market share from ebook, although some from physical. And then also, to some extent, it's adding. Like there are a lot of people buying audiobooks that it doesn't look like we're buying either ebooks or physical books. And so I think the podcast boom has a lot to do with that. People are really used to listening to content now, and the quality of audio, et cetera, has gone way up. But
Hmm.
anyway, so all of these things have kind of combined. The numbers are clear. Books are not going anywhere; they're growing, right? And then I'm a big fan of Nassim Taleb, who's also a client of ours. But what in I believe it's in Black Swan. I probably got it wrong, but he talks about the Lindy effect, which is
Oh yeah, I
right.
remember seeing that book.
Right. If you want to know how long something's going to be around, look how long it has already been around, right? And that it'll be around at least that long. So books have been around for, as far as we can tell, at least 5,000 years in some form. If you count scrolls and things like that, then we're looking maybe even further back. But books, as we understand, are thousands of years old, and so they're not going anywhere. Whereas all of the other sort of social media, whatever, I'm who knows, like we're
Hmm.
still very new in this, and we don't really know, but we know that books are a major cultural force, and books aren't going anywhere, and books are still iconic sort of pieces of culture. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple things like when you're saying that. One is, what's your take on when someone's actually like for me, I buy an ebook sometimes and then I buy the book. I don't actually buy it twice. Is that common?
It's super common. Yeah.
because I like
Um,
to have it in my hand.
yeah, it is super common, and people buying audio and then either and then physical as well. Super common. We see that happen a lot. It's crazy, man. At this point, most of our, not most, a huge portion of our authors who do, not all of them do audiobooks, but a huge portion of them who do audiobooks, they're seeing anywhere from 30 to 60% of their sales on audio. Like our
No way.
best-selling author is David Goggins, who wrote Can't Hurt Me. It's a pretty well-known book. He sold 60% of his books on audio.
So if I'm going to do an audio, do you do it in your own voice?
Great question. For most authors, we recommend no. And here's why. First off, it's exhausting. Like, unless you do podcasts. So I don't know how you do them, but have you ever had a day where you stacked like 4 podcasts back to back?
Yep.
Yeah. And were you just utterly shattered at the end of the day?
Yeah, pretty tired.
Yeah, yeah, so audiobooks are worse because there's no interaction, dude. It's not a
Hmm.
conversations can be pretty, charging, if they're good conversations, pretty inspiring. Reading your audiobook reading your book is almost never, energizing, unless you're, like, have a lot of experience speaking or performing, 'cause
Yeah.
it's a performance, and performances just by their nature are very draining.
Hmm.
And so, like, I mean, I'm telling you this as someone who's read multiple audiobooks. Like the only people that we recommend reading it in their voice are people for whom, like, they're writing a memoir and they're kind of well known, and so the audience would really expect it from them. Otherwise, you're almost always better off hiring a voice actor. The voice actor is gonna do better than you, and you don't spend 2 or 3 or 4 days just utterly exhausting yourself for like a C- job.
Right. Fair enough. Well, that's the whole thing is you leveraging people's time because, you know, when I was going through, I doing a world tour, was doing like a Tony Robbins Platinum partnership and flying around. That was last year. And I was able to do this while I was still doing that and running my business. That was actually what attracted me to doing this was I, for the reasons that you first stated, which is I wanted my own voice. And maybe you can talk a little about the difference between ghostwriting and this, but I wanted my own voice, and I what didn't expect was how easy it would be just having these calls. And I felt like there was somewhere between a coaching call, but they were completely just asking me questions. I felt like I just showed up with my knowledge, and I didn't really have to prep as much, or I was expecting more. You know?
You mean for podcasts or
No,
for
no.
our
For
call?
when I was working with your team at
Oh,
Scribe.
for Scribe, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, the difference between Scribe and ghostwriting, first off, there's not a hard and fast definition of ghostwriting. But generally speaking, when you say ghostwriting to most people, what they think is that you're paying someone to write a book, uh, uh, that you just put your name on,
Right.
you know?
Is that
Which,
common?
yes, happens all the time.
Okay.
Like, you can show me a bestseller list, and I can tell you, I can point out, at least it's almost never less than a quarter. Usually, it can be up to a half of the books.
Holy shit!
Yeah, we're
Really?
ghost. Yeah. Uh huh. Yeah. Uh huh. Yep.
That feels
And
fraudulent.
yeah, in certain ways, it is, dude. Welcome to modern media, brother.
I
A
guess
lot of
so.
it's
Well,
fake
that was one of my
bullshit.
points I was gonna make was that with sort of misinformation and things of that nature, fake news. I thought books would be kind of that area we're going. Well, it's unlike social media; you could just post something, a thought. You actually have to take some time and publish it. I mean, I know there's books
Or
of
you
lies
pay
out there, but
someone. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so most celebs. I mean, look, man. Here's the reality. So, like, I have ghostwritten. I have co-written one memoir with Tiffany Haddish, right? And then there's another one. What I'm under NDA. I can't talk about who, but I ghost wrote that memoir, and then yeah, I got paid a stupid amount of money for that, and so I was like, all right, fine. But I know most of the big ghostwriters. Neil Strauss is a good friend of mine. Niels Parker is a good friend of mine. We get on the list of them, and you would be shocked at the there are definitely exceptions, man. There are definitely celebs who take it real seriously and who dump their soul into it. And those are usually the books who do really well.
hmm.
But like for every Open by Andre Agassi, which is amazing, or The Dirt by Motley Crue, for every one of those, there's 10 or 20 that come out and like are just terrible. And they're generally terrible because the celeb doesn't want to reveal any truths. They don't want to kind of really go deep. And so they kind of tell a few stories to a ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter makes a bunch of more stuff up and tries to make it sound good enough that the fans will be not that upset. And
Mhm.
then it's like get a little payday and go, and that's like a celeb memoir. Or if you're talking about like all these political books, like not one of those are written by the people. There are maybe a few exceptions, but the authors are never the ones. Bill O'Reilly has a whole series of books about historical stuff that he's not even involved in. He has a team of people that write
He
those.
slaps his name on it.
Yeah, he's not involved at all. He's, I think, fairly transparent about that, but there's plenty that aren't.
Hmm.
James Patterson, very famous novelist, sells tens of millions of books a year. He's transparent about this. He has a whole studio. Like, he doesn't write any of his books. Now, he is
I'm
deeply
not gonna
involved
lie,
in the
it kind of
creation
makes
of
me
them.
angry because I've like put so much fucking time in my book. I thought everybody did.
Yeah, no. No.
Uh,
There are definitely
there you
people
go.
who do. So, like it's don't just assume every book is like fraudulent, but you
Yeah,
can
of
almost
course.
always tell the ones that someone puts a lot of time and effort in. Now, like, you can hire someone to help and still put a ton of blood, sweat, and tears in, and do a fantastic book. Like that. That's the whole point behind our whole company is that uh, we don't. We want to help people who are really smart, who have great things to say, who aren't either capable of writing their own book or don't have the time or the desire, but want to get their ideas out in their words and their voice. That's why we created Scribe, right?
Yeah,
To create a
perfect reason.
process for that, right? It's funny, man. We'll get a lot of like we had this one. I'll never forget this sales call I did. A pretty well known CEO, at least in the business world, and he's like, "Hey, I need to get my book on sales done." I'm like, "Okay, cool. So, like, tell me about what you're thinking about it'll be about." He's like, whatever." He's like, "It's a book on sales. Just give me a good ghostwriter who's done a few sales books. Write me a sales book on sales, and then we'll go from there." And I was like, "Okay, we're probably the wrong fit for you." Like, and then I referred him to like one of the writers who just makes stuff up for authors, and he got his sales book and he was happy with it, and he paid $250,000 for a bestseller campaign. I think it hit the list for 1 week and then it disappeared and you haven't heard anything else about it.
So, why are books? Why do you think books are really important right now?
So it depends. There's two big reasons why books are important. um, and they can converge. They can both apply to one author. There's what I would call the set of business reasons, right? And that can be any number of things. But the point is, we live in a world now where if you're a high level business professional, you kind of have to have your own media. You have to have your own brand, right? It doesn't have to be a personal brand. You don't have to be a Kardashian or anything like that. But you need a professional brand. And by professional brand, I mean you need proof of work. You need to be able to point to a set of things that show that's not a resume, that show you can do the job that someone would hire you for, right? And it can
Hmm.
be, it doesn't have to be a book. Of course, you could have a YouTube channel, or you can have a ton of well-known successes that people have written articles about. There's so many ways to have a portfolio, let's say. But a book is one of the absolute best ways to prove that you know what you're talking about, right? Because like if you write a book, you are really putting yourself out there, because yeah, a lot of people are like, oh, no one reads the book. Okay, but what about those people who do? They're gonna read it and they're gonna tell real quick if you know what you're talking about or not. The example I always give is the guy that when I was still CEO of my company at the beginning, the guy Cameron Harrell, excuse me, that I hired to be my CEO coach, I bought every single book on how to scale a company by every single CEO coach. Dude, most of them were terrible. Like, I knew more than most of those people. And I'm like, if I know more about this than you shouldn't be selling yourself as a coach on this. And then I got to his book. It's called Double Double. It was a terrible name. And I joke with Cameron about this all the time. I'm like, Cameron, a double double is a cheeseburger from In and Out. And
Yeah.
he's like, no, it's doubling your company. And I'm like, no, no, no. But the book's amazing. The content's amazing. I'm like, okay, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And so I hired him, and now he's been an advisor to our company for years and an integral part of our success. Right. And it was because of his book. He had to prove to me that he knew what he was talking about before I was going to hire him, you know?
Hmm. And you mentioned personal brand, like that. That's almost like become it, and maybe even increasing with COVID and people being working from home and having maybe fractional roles, or even just freelancing. That's like a great calling card. It's got to be a major differentiator.
So that when I say you need media, that's what I mean. And when I say you need a professional brand, that's what I mean. You've got to have something out there that shows people that you are an expert at the thing you claim you're an expert at. You've got to prove it. Like just saying it is not good enough
Hmm.
anymore, you know? Or having a resume. I worked at Microsoft. Well, it's like, okay, well, what'd you do there? You know, there's a lot of people who work there. And so, or I'm a coach. It's like, okay, cool. Well, how do I know you're any good? Right? Why would I hire you to implement your culture system at my company? It's like, oh, well, here's my book about it. Here's all the case studies. It's like, oh, okay, whole different conversation, right? And and of course, you have that. Then it's like leads are easy, sales are easy, credibility, authority, all those sorts of things become really easy or far easier. And you kind of become you enter a different level when you're an author. Listen, just shitting out a book is not good enough. It's got to be a good book. You've got to know what you're talking about. It's got to be a professional book. The book has to look as professional as you, as at least as professional as you are and you want to be, right?
Hmm.
The other reason is what I would call, in the broadest sense, personal growth, right? There are so many, let's call it non-business reasons. It doesn't make them less important at all. But a book expands who you are. It expands your identity. It proves to you that you can do something hard. It gives you confidence. It helps establish your legacy. It helps you work through, potentially work through emotional issues. You can tell your story. People can get to know who you are. There's so much you can get emotionally, personally, growth wise from a book. And you can get all of that writing a business book, or you can decide I'm just going to write a memoir, and you focus mainly on the personal growth aspect. Although plenty of people who write memoirs get tons of business type benefits off of it, right? You're usually better off prioritizing one or the over the other in terms of a goal, but you everyone who writes a book gets at least something out of each category.
Well, it's funny you'd say that because I was telling Jill, my wife, I said, I think the one thing I wasn't expecting that I feel has just happened is I've got massive clarity on my own ideas and structure in a way that I can communicate so far better than I've ever thought possible. And I just feel like I didn't just write a book, I learned now how to write a book. And I feel like the next one will be way easier.
It will be. We have so many authors who, when they finish their first book, they go right into their second.
I'm already
And yet,
thinking about it.
dude, it's so common. And then the other thing too is it really will. Like, writing a book won't teach you what you know that much. Although for some people it can and help a little bit. But what it will do is it'll show you the holes in what you know, and it'll teach you how to explain what you know. Because like even though you might be a true expert in your head, but there's a big difference between being an expert and being able to teach other people or explain it to other people. Totally different things.
Like, when do you know you're done though? Because I just handed my last version of my last manuscript. Now it's going into more fine edit. And I at the very end there, it's like I finally found I feel like my voice.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like I'm looking at the stuff I wrote or that was started with. I almost go, man, if I just had another 6 months or 3 months, this would be so much better. At what point do you just got to go, it's good?
Yeah, so I think Seth Godin said a book is never finished, but it is published. And so
That's a
like
great quote.
you can it would be so once you get on that treadmill, that perfectionist treadmill, then you will never ever actually publish a book. So it's a great thing. It's a great thing you got off, and we this is a thing we've had to learn how to really do with our authors is kind of push them when they're spinning too much. You want to actually do the work to refine it, get it sharp as possible, but at some point it becomes the best book you can do right now.
Mm.
And then when you hit that point, it's even though you could definitely write a better book in 5 years, just write a different book in 5 years. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, well, that's a great point of view. I just that was something I just wasn't expecting. So, we're talking about, like, you're publishing a book. A lot of people that are looking at book writing, are they kind of, I've been approached by so many people now about it, of course, and they have these visions of like making bajillions of dollars and stuff, and I just said, I'm actually, I I guess my hope is that it's well received, but really I'm not using it for the book sales. I'm looking at it completely differently. For my personal brand, as you mentioned, and stuff. Like, what do you say to people that are trying to like really assess, the purpose behind writing a book?
Yeah, so this is a great point. It's one of the most important things that we bring up with people is not to rely on book sales as the measure of success. And for people, like, a lot of people don't understand that at first. So, like, but isn't that the way you measure whether a book is successful? It's like it can be a measure, don't get me wrong, but it is, for most people, it's a very poor measure of it. So think about it. Like, let's say that you're an HR consultant, right? And let's say you specialize in a type of whatever HR that like is only applicable to like construction companies or something, right? But you're the expert in the world on that. Like, you are the person for HR and construction companies. There's no possible universe where you're going to sell a lot of copies of your book. That universe doesn't exist. There are, I'm going to make up a number. There are 10,000 construction companies or even 50,000 construction companies in America, and that's it. That's your audience. And if there's 50,000, you're going to be lucky to sell 5,000 copies of that over 5 or 10 years. But what you're going to do is make a ton of money off that book, because that book is going to establish you and cement you as the person in the field. Everyone who has an HR problem in construction is now coming to you, and you're going to make millions of dollars off of that book. It just won't come from book sales. It's going to come from business.
That makes tons of sense. I think about, even myself as I'm writing the book and looking at, even writing future books, is like, what else can come of this, that hears my voice and people I'll meet and potential public speaking or different things. Like, where would this lead if I didn't have this, and if I didn't tell this story of my unique point of view on sustainable growth marketing? And I guess the question is like, how important I feel, and I think you do, because I saw a little clip. I was going through some of the video clips you did, but just talking a little bit about the importance of people actually sharing their point of view and their story, how I think critical it is right now more than ever.
So, what we like to tell our authors is, and you've clearly, whether you heard it or you just intuited it, you've got it. The most important thing you can do is see, you don't view your book as the thing that you're going to market. View your book as a tool you use to market yourself. You are the important thing, not your book. Like, dude, you don't want to be in the business of selling copies of dead trees. That doesn't even make sense. You want to be in the business of using this book to reach the people who need your help and who can learn from you, and show them that you have something to offer them, right? So that either if they're poor and can't afford to work with you, cool, here's your knowledge, use it to grow your company so you can get to the level where you can hire me. And if you can hire me, this should be a really good intro to the work so you could understand exactly how I can help, and come talk and let's see if we can do something together.
Makes tons of sense. I mean, it's just, again, like you say, it's like a calling card. It's like a big calling card, big business card. Where do you think the future of books are going to be, like, with virtual reality, or what innovations are you seeing from authors and that are kind of integrating things with their book? Like, for me, there was like four of my major sections. I just didn't have it figured out just right the way I wanted. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to make it a link, and I'll have a landing page, and that'll give me a chance to add new, fresh ideas and case studies that support that. And that's just what I decided to do. Um, I don't know if that's an innovation, probably isn't, but is there things like that you've seen that would be really inspiring to look at a book?
So, the way I think about it is, what matters. The only thing that really matters is uh, teaching what you know to people who would benefit from it and telling your story to those people who it would inspire and help. And a book is a way to do that. And you can use a book to accomplish both of those goals. And then you can also use a book in a million other ways. I think anything you can do with the book that helps you find people whose knowledge you can help and find people who you can inspire, you should do. And so, yeah, like, dude, giving stuff away from the book, repackaging it in certain ways. Like, people focus so much on the medium. I don't think the medium really matters. What matters is the message. And of course, the two things are inseparable, right? But like, I would focus on what is my message, who can I help, and then how do I use all these different mediums to do that? And a book just happens to have a lot of cultural cachet and a lot of permanence in our current world. So you can start with that. And then once you have the book as an anchor, then you can build all these other things off of it using what's in the book. But again, keeping focus of how do I find people I can help, um, and how do I find people I can inspire.
What if you're thinking about writing a book? This was kind of where I was at initially. And I'm like worried that it's already been written, it's already been said.
Great question. So this is one of the most common questions we get. And your job at writing a book is not, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but stay with me. Your job is not to have completely original thoughts. First off, I'm sitting in, you can't tell, I'm sitting in my library right now. I got at least 2,000 or 3,000 books in here. There are, man, at most 10% of the content in here is truly original. Probably less than 10%. What originality is, in fact, in a lot of ways, a true originality is actually very counterproductive. If you're truly original, man, it's probably not all that valuable. You know, like, most of the highly valuable stuff has been in some way, shape, or form already discovered. Your job as an author and as a communicator in almost any way, but as an author, is to find people who don't know what you know and curate your knowledge in such a way that it can reach them and impact them. Right? To say that, to say that, oh well, a book on sales has already been written, or a book on marketing has already been written, so I shouldn't write one, is to say that no one has any marketing problems, which is absurd. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's laughable on face, right? Like, you know a bunch of stuff about certain ways to market that would really help a bunch of people. So, like, that's the job. That's the job of the book, you know. And it's not. Now, I'll tell you what's original, is your take. Let's just say there's no single idea in your book that's original at all. I actually would doubt that there's nothing at all. But let's just pretend for a second that every single idea in your book can be found somewhere else, right? What is absolutely original is the way that you put those ideas together, the way that you explain them, and the way that you curate all that knowledge and present it to the people who don't know it and aren't using it. That is original. That is the originality that matters.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. So it's like if you go to we'll say public speaking or something, and you've heard the same message, but it's said by somebody differently. It's either the tone, the way they said it, or the stories they wrapped around it. It just resonated with you.
I mean, think about, man, every Sunday, well, let's forget about coronavirus for a second, but mostly every Sunday, billions of people, but millions of people in America, tens of millions, go to church. Like, you're going to tell me any of those preachers are saying something truly original about the Bible or Jesus? Get out of here. But that doesn't make the sermons any less meaningful. It doesn't make them any less impactful. And actually, it doesn't make them any less original, because let's say I'm a preacher, my take on Jesus and my application of Jesus's teachings to the modern world is my own. And that is original. And if I can reach people with that in a way nothing else is, that's very meaningful.
What about other languages? International? Like, when do you make the decision that Does it happen that you get requests for it and then you go,
Yeah.
oh shit, we're big in Japan or something? Like,
Yeah, no,
how does that
that's
work?
basically exactly what happens. So we have a foreign rights agent, and so she, I think it's a she. She looks at all of the books we publish every month, and then she knows what uh, markets are like and who's looking for what. And so she will then make offers on books and then shop them to publishers in other countries. So
Oh,
like
so
like
my book, when I publish with you, she might pick it up and go, "Hey, because right now my podcast is super big in Switzerland, so I'm like, Switzerland. Oh, that's English though. It's not. Maybe I guess they're German, so I don't know. Who knows?
No, I mean, I'll tell you, like the two biggest markets for books in the world per capita are actually America's not even in the top five, I don't think, per capita.
Are you kidding?
Um, no, South Korea is number one. They're a country of intense readers. And then Germany would be number two. Um, I forget after that. It's mostly European countries in the top five after that, I think. But
Can you
Korea is like a
preemptively
strong number
translate
one.
it so that you can be because there's probably less competition.
Yeah, you can do that, but see, it's really hard to market to. As I'm sure you're in marketing, you understand. Like, you don't just take an American product and launch it in Korea the way you did in America, right? It doesn't. It almost never works that way.
Mm.
And books are very similar. So, uh, there's a lot of people who do really pretty well running publishing companies in other countries, and all they do is take American content and package it for their market. But you've got to understand that market, and there's a lot of nuances to that.
Mm.
It's not that easy, you know.
What about age? When is it someone too young, or is there ever an age where you kind of go, "Hey, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You don't have a lot to say here."
Well, arguably the greatest book ever written was written by a 13-year-old Jewish girl who was living in an attic hiding from the Nazis.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah,
Anne
she had
Frank.
something to say.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like the I guess that's I don't even know how to put that.
Seriously, like no, people ask about age all the time, and I'm like, well, then go tell Anne Frank her book sucks,
That's a
because
great.
that book inspired the hell out of me.
Yeah. Well, she had quite an experience, and she did such a good job writing that. It's no kidding. What do you see going forward with books or just in publishing in general? Where do you see the future? Like just generally speaking, do you see? I know you say it's growing, um, but do you see that being changing in any way with like virtual reality or
No.
um, anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. Anyone who's like, I can predict the future is probably a fool, either a fool or a god, right? And
Mhm.
I am neither. Um, but I will tell you the one prediction I could make about books that I can be somewhat confident about. And the reason I can become sorry, my kids are home. You might hear some
It's all
chirping,
good.
but the reason I can be confident about it is because I'm going to have a part in bringing it to existence. I am confident that books used to be the domain only of the uber rich and the elites, and they have only recently become the domain of the uh, wealthy and privileged. You know, I think in the next we're going to see the next 30 to 50 years, we're going to see everyone on earth write books. And I think the explosion is going to be in memoirs and not nonfiction. I think everyone on earth has a story to tell, and I think everyone can tell it. And I think books are going to be a huge way that they do.
Isn't that interesting? I just like I try to think about myself writing a memoir and my life story, and I guess the first thing would be like, I mean, I guess there's interesting areas of my life so far, but I feel like it's far from over. So I don't know, when do you write a memoir? Like late in
So
life?
that's a great question. I'll tell you when. You write a memoir when you feel like you really want to be honest and authentic about your life story. And like I said, Anne Frank could do it at 13. I started doing it in my late 20s and early 30s. And not even about all my life, just a part of my life. You don't have to write about everything. When you're ready to be really open and really honest and really authentic about any part of your life, then you're ready to write about that part in a memoir.
So it sounds to me like you have a big vision. How it sounds like Scribe. I just saw, you're doing some free courses in addition to your services. And is that to just make more accessibility?
Yeah, when I said I'm going to have a part in creating this future, that's what I meant. Yeah, like we're a big believer that everyone should have access to this knowledge, and everyone should be able to know how to write a book and how to tell their story. And so, yeah, we built a service company on the back, and we're going to make some good money on it. It's going to really help. But I mean, we could sell. We're leaving millions of dollars on the table by not selling these courses. But in the long run, I think it's going to benefit us a lot, honestly. But also, it's like I like to sleep well at night, and I think doing the right thing is important, and I think that's the right thing.
Yeah, I was super surprised. I thought maybe it would be a limited time, but you still offer it right now, don't you?
It is so the complete course on how to do everything we do with clients is available for free right now and will be forever.
See, that's so crazy. That's an incredible value. So, which is awesome. Like that just says so much. What about there's a portion of what you can't do without help, like how do I get it on Amazon and stuff? Is that the services that you would offer to people to help them if they want it?
Well, so basically, our goal is to have information. Like we'll teach you how to do everything. They will give you the information for free.
Mhm.
The reason to hire us is for our expertise and to save time. Like you can't you got to pay for expertise. Like I mean, I can tell you the information, but then if you want me to evaluate your writing or my team, that's you're paying for our time, right? And you're paying for our expertise. And then of course, I can tell you how to design a book cover, but that takes a decade or so of expertise to do it really well. So you're really way better off hiring us or someone else. And then time. Like you can learn how to we give you all the information so you can go slow and learn how to do it yourself and take 2 years, right, or to write it, or even a year, but a year of like 3 hours a day or whatever. Or you can hire us and then you're going to be done in 10 months, 2 hours a day or 2 hours a week, sorry.
Mm.
So like you're buying time and expertise.
That's actually my calculation. I'm very analytical that way. I calculated how much time would it take for me to figure this out or write it on my own without support, and how much billing would I miss as a result of that. Because I have lots of friends who are well known authors, and they've lost a year and a half of their life, or maybe 2 years, and it really affected them financially. They said, it's pretty debilitating.
Yep. No, it's exactly right. Like the cost benefit analysis is really pretty simple. Like it it's somewhere around anywhere from 75 to $150 an hour. Like what's your time worth? When it gets below $50 an hour, you're probably better off doing most stuff yourself. When it gets a 75 to 100, it's a little iffy. Above 100, you're almost always better off hiring help.
And what about marketing? That's the last piece here as we kind of get close to the end of the podcast. How do you market this smart?
So, if you've positioned your book properly, then marketing should be really easy. And by positioning, I mean, did you really identify like your goals in writing the book, who your audience is, and why they're going to care about the book? If you've identified that and you wrote the right book, then marketing's easy because you know exactly who your audience is and why they're going to care. So go find where they are and put your book in front of them. And basically, what you're saying is, hey, you have a problem. My book solves your problem. Here's how. And then it's like, then that's marketing's very easy when you are selling people something they want.
I actually made my podcast part of my research and content for the book.
That
So
makes total sense. Yeah, you probably interviewed a bunch of people who were domain experts in certain things in your book, and then use some of those ideas, right, in
mhm.
stories.
Yeah, and it kind of did a flight test of some ideas to see what they thought of it, and then they added to it and they kind of validated it. So it just sort of made me feel more confident about writing it. And then I now have all the different people that are on my podcast, including yourself, that I can mention in the book or have mentioned in the book, and possibly they'll share it to the network. And in advance of that, I just have created a wait list for people, getting them excited about what these ideas are, and they'll be first in line to get some access to it. So when you write a book and you do it through Scribe or you self-publish, you have the rights to it. I think that's one thing that gets people mixed up is you have the rights to it, so you can use it for marketing. I can do whatever I want with the book, correct?
Yep, you can give it away for free. You can do excerpts. You can do anything. Whereas if you go through a traditional company, they own the rights, and the only way they make money is you selling copies. So they don't want you to do anything that trades off with selling copies. Whereas you might decide, I'm going to do a bunch of promotions that actually reduce sales in the book, but spread exposure and spread the word and get me clients, because clients are worth way more than book sales.
Yeah,
And
a lot
so
of people
when you
don't.
self-publish, you have that option.
Yeah, like when you work with a publisher, you can't just go, "Hey, I'm going to give everybody in the crowd here a free ebook," like Oprah. You have to work with the publisher probably to agree to that.
Yeah, exactly. And they're never going to agree to that because that's how they make money.
Right. That's a big distinction for doing this in the way that you've put together. It's such a great business model. I can't thank you enough for inventing it. It used to be called Book in the Box. It's now Scribe Media. Where can everybody follow you if they want to follow with you or catch up or even find out where this free school is?
So I'm on all the free school is scribebookschool.com. That's probably the best place to start if you want the information. If you want to work with us, go to scribewriting.com. And then for me, I'm on all the normal channels: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Tucker Max.
There you have it. Thank you so much for being on the show. I so appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Great talking to you.
Awesome. And thanks, everyone. Thanks for another amazing episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. Again, if you have any ideas, questions, or you want to interact, just hit the microphone at groundswell.fm. And until next time, mahalo.